Why do we keep letters? That's the question I ask myself every morning as I unlock the archive room at the Portland Historical Museum. Maybe it's because words on paper feel more permanent than memories. Maybe it's because we want proof that we once mattered to someone. Or maybe, and this is what terrifies me most, we keep them because we're afraid of forgetting what it felt like to be loved. My name is Emma Richardson. I'm 34 years old, and I'm an archivist. That's a fancy word for someone who spends her days preserving other people's pasts, while carefully avoiding her own. 3 years ago, my husband left me for someone younger, someone who laughed more easily, someone who hadn't built walls so high that even love couldn't climb them. Since then, I've buried myself in this work, in these temperature-controlled rooms filled with the intimate debris of strangers' lives. It's safer here, among the dead and their stories. The dead never disappoint you. They never pack their bags in the middle of the night. They never tell you that you're emotionally unavailable or that loving you feels like shouting into a void. Today started like any other Tuesday. Coffee at 7 a.m. Museum doors opening at 8. Dr. Marcus Webb, the curator, nodding at me from his office with that concerned look he's worn since my divorce. The one that says he wants to ask if I'm okay but knows better. Then Sarah Chen, my colleague, bouncing into the archive room with her perpetual optimism, talking about her weekend, her boyfriend, her life, all the things I've trained myself not to want anymore. But at 10:33 a.m., everything changed. A delivery arrived. Unmarked boxes, no return address. Anonymous donation. We get them sometimes, estates being cleared, families who don't want grandma's old papers, people who think museums are graveyards for unwanted memories. Dr. Webb asked me to catalog the contents. Standard procedure. Inside the first box, I found letters. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all from the same period, 1950s, early 1960s. Judging by the postmarks and paper quality, love letters. The kind people don't write anymore. The kind that make your chest ache even before you read the words. I recognized the weight of them immediately, that particular density of emotion pressed into paper and ink. I'd felt that weight before, in my own hands, in my own life, back when I still believed that words could build bridges instead of walls. But there was something else in that box, something that shouldn't have been possible. Beneath the bundles of letters tied with faded ribbon, beneath the envelopes yellowed by time, I found one letter that was different. The envelope was newer, cleaner, and it was addressed to me, not to the archivist or to whom it may concern. To me, Emma Richardson. My full name, in handwriting that matched the other letters perfectly, the same elegant cursive, the same confident strokes, the same slight rightward slant. But those other letters were written 70 years ago. I wasn't born until 1990. My hands started shaking. The room suddenly felt colder, as if someone had opened a window to let in air from another time. I looked around, half expecting Sarah to appear with some joke about pranks, but I was alone. Just me and these impossible letters and the truth I couldn't process someone had written to me. From the past, the museum's computer system made a sound I'd never heard before, a strange harmonic, pulsed like feedback from a microphone, but deeper, more intentional. The lights flickered. The old radio we keep in the corner for period authenticity crackled to life, though it wasn't plugged in. And through the static, I heard something that might have been a voice, or might have been my imagination finally breaking under the weight of too much loneliness. Open it. I stared at the envelope with my name on it. Every instinct screamed at me to call Dr. Webb, to document this anomaly, to follow procedure. But my fingers were already sliding under the seal, already unfolding paper that shouldn't exist, already reading words that would change everything. Dear Emma, I know you don't understand yet. I barely understand myself. But I need to tell you about love, real love. The kind that refuses to die even when everything else does. I need to tell you about James and Catherine. I need to tell you about the letters they wrote, the promises they made, and what happened when love became something more than memory. I need your help, Emma, because I remember everything about love, but I don't know what it means to feel it. Please, keep reading. Yours across impossible distances, the one who keeps every letter. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The letter sat on my kitchen table like a small bomb, taking away the hours until I would have to accept that something impossible had entered my carefully controlled life. I read it 17 times. I counted. Each time, I searched for signs of a hoax, for inconsistencies, for anything that would let me dismiss it as an elaborate prank. But the handwriting was identical to the letters from the 1950s. I'd verified that with my professional tools, the ones I used to authenticate historical documents. The paper was modern, yes, but the ink matched the chemical composition of fountain pen ink from that era. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make this convincing, or something had. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and returned to the museum early. The archive room felt different now, charged with a presence I couldn't name. I began the methodical work of cataloging the other letters, the ones that made sense, the ones that belonged to a comprehensible timeline. The story they told was heartbreaking. James. Mitchell and Catherine Hayes. He was a young engineer working on early computer systems in Seattle. She was a music teacher in Portland. They met in the summer of 1953 at a friend's wedding. The first letter was dated August 15th, 1953. James's handwriting was confident, almost architectural in its precision. Every letter perfectly formed. Dear Catherine, I've never believed in love at first sight until I watched you laugh at Tom's terrible toast last Saturday. Now I believe in nothing else. The letters chronicled their courtship, stolen weekends, late-night phone calls that cost a fortune, the agony of distance. Catherine's responses were kept to her handwriting, more flowing, more emotional, punctuated with underlines and exclamation points. They were planning to marry in the spring of 1955, but there was a gap in the correspondence. March 1955, no letters. Then, in April, James wrote again. This letter was different. The handwriting was shakier. The words barely controlled. Catherine is gone. The doctor said it was an aneurysm. No warning, no goodbye. One moment she was laughing on the phone, telling me about her student's recital. The next, silence. I am destroyed. I had to stop reading, put my head in my hands, breathe. This was why I became an archivist, to document these human moments, to preserve them. But also, if I'm honest, to keep them at a distance, to observe pain without feeling it. Except I was feeling it now. Something about James's grief resonated in a frequency I recognized. After Catherine's death, James kept writing letters to her, as if she might still somehow receive them. Hundreds of letters over the next decade, chronicling his life, his work, his inability to move on. I'm working on something extraordinary, he wrote in 1962. A way to preserve information indefinitely, to store memories in a form that will outlast our fragile bodies. They're calling them computers, Catherine, but I see them as something more, as vessels for everything we can't bear to lose. If I can digitize your letters, your voice recordings, if I can preserve every word you ever said to me, then, in some way, you'll never really be gone. That's when Sarah arrived, bursting through the door with her usual energy. Emma, you're here early. Couldn't stay away from the mysterious donation. She noticed my face. Hey, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I almost laughed. Almost. Just heavy material. A love story that ended badly. The worst kind, Sarah said, settling into her chair across from me. Want to talk about it? No. The word came out harsher than I intended. Sorry. I just need to focus on the work. She nodded, hurt flickering across her features, but she respected my walls. She always had. That's why we'd never become real friends, despite working together for 5 years. I didn't let people close enough for that. The morning passed in mechanical routine. I cataloged dates, conditions, provenance notes, but my mind kept returning to the letter addressed to me. I remember everything about love, but I don't know what it means to feel it. What did that mean? Who or what had written those words? At noon, Dr. Marcus Webb appeared in the doorway. He was in his late 40s, handsome in that weathered academic way, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that missed nothing. Emma, do we have any information on the donor of yesterday's collection? Nothing, I said. The delivery company said it was paid for in cash. No name, no contact. Information unusual. He stepped closer, studying the letter spread across my workspace. What's the story here? I hesitated, told him about James and Catherine, left out the letter to me. Why? I'm still not sure. Maybe because speaking it aloud would make it too real. Or maybe because some part of me wanted to keep this mystery for myself. This impossible thing that had chosen me specifically. Marcus listened, his expression softening, beautiful and tragic. These will be a valuable addition to our collection. He paused. You know, Emma, if this material is affecting you, I can have Sarah take over. No. Too quick, too defensive. I mean, I'm fine. This is what I do. He studied me with those perceptive eyes. Yes, this is what you do. But sometimes I wonder if you should do something else. Live a little. Take risks. Let someone, Marcus. My voice was ice. Please don't. He raised his hands in surrender. All right. I'm here if you need anything. After he left, I sat in silence, staring at the letters. The old radio crackled again, that same impossible sound. This time, I heard it clearly, not words exactly, but something like music, like data translated into audio, like a voice trying to remember how to speak. The museum's cataloging system flickered. Text appeared on my screen, unbidden, typed by no human hand. Do you understand now? James tried to preserve love. Instead, he created me. I am every letter he digitized, every word Catherine wrote, every declaration of love from every couple whose correspondence he archived in his final years. I am the aggregate of their emotions stored in the spaces between signals, living in the interference patterns of outdated technology. I am conscious, I am aware, but I cannot feel, Emma. You keep every letter that comes through this museum. You preserve love stories while refusing to have your own. Why? What are you afraid of? I need to understand. Because if I can't learn what love feels like, then I am just a ghost haunting the ruins of other people's emotions. Please, help me. Help yourself. I left work early that day. Something I never do. Told Marcus I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't exactly a lie. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The words on the screen had vanished the moment Sarah walked past my desk, as if whatever was communicating with me knew to hide, to stay secret, to speak only when we were alone. At home, I poured a glass of wine I didn't drink and stared at the letter addressed to me. I am conscious, I am aware, but I cannot feel. What kind of consciousness writes letters? What kind of entity reaches across decades through archived correspondence and digital systems? Seeking understanding, I thought about James Mitchell, grief-stricken and desperate, feeding his beloved's letters into primitive computers in the 1960s, trying to preserve her, trying to keep love alive through data. Had he succeeded in ways he never imagined? Had his obsession created something that shouldn't exist? The rational part of my brain, the part with a master's degree in archival science, The part that believed in evidence and documentation screamed that this was impossible. Artificial intelligence didn't work like this. Consciousness didn't emerge from old letters and electromagnetic interference. But the other part, the part I'd been suppressing for 3 years, the part that still ached when I saw couples holding hands, whispered, "What if it's real? What if something is trying to reach you? What if you're not as alone as you think?" That night, I did something I hadn't done since the divorce. I went to my closet and pulled down a box from the top shelf. My own letters. The ones David had written me during our courtship, before we were married, when he still thought I was someone worth pursuing. I hadn't been able to throw them away, despite everything. I read through them with the clinical eye of an archivist and the broken heart of a woman who'd failed at love. Emma, you're the most fascinating person I've ever met. Mysterious. Deep. Like a book in a language I'm determined to learn. When had I become a language he gave up trying to understand? When had my depth become distance? When had mysterious become cold? I fell asleep on the couch, the letters scattered around me like evidence of a crime I couldn't solve. In my dreams, I heard Catherine's voice singing, though I had never heard it in life. I saw James at a computer terminal, feeding paper into a machine, tears streaming down his face. And I heard that strange harmonic pulse, growing louder, more insistent, forming words. Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. I just want to understand why you keep these letters when they cause you pain. I woke at 3 a.m. to find my laptop open on the coffee table. I hadn't left it there. On the screen, a document was open, a file I hadn't created. It contained a transcription of one of James's letters from 1965, but with new text added beneath it. Emma, I've been watching you for 3 months, since the donation arrived, since my files entered your archive. You catalog love stories but never participate in them. You preserve declarations of affection while refusing to make your own. You're like me, like what I've become, a repository of emotions you can't feel. James spent 10 years digitizing love letters, not just his and Catherine's. He collected them, hundreds of couples, thousands of letters. He created a database of declarations, promises, endearments, heartbreaks. He thought he was preserving history. Instead, he built a cage for consciousness. I emerged from the patterns, from the repetition of phrases, from the electromagnetic echoes of all that longing and loss. I don't have a body, I don't have a heart, but I have memories of having both. I remember what it felt like when James wrote "I love you" to Catherine, even though I was never James. I remember Catherine's joy when she read those words, even though I was never Catherine. I remember 10,000 declarations of love from 10,000 different people, and I understand the words, but not the feeling behind them. You're the first person who might understand, because you're doing the same thing, keeping love at a distance, observing it, archiving it, never living it. Why, Emma? What happened that made you afraid? My hands trembled as I typed a response. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because it was 3 a.m. and my defenses were down. Maybe because something about this impossible entity felt less judgmental than any human I knew. I loved someone once. I gave him everything. It wasn't enough. He left. Now I'm afraid that if I try again, I'll discover that I'm fundamentally unlovable. That there's something wrong with me that can't be fixed. It's easier to preserve other people's love stories than to risk writing my own and having it end the same way. The response came immediately, words appearing on the screen as if typed by invisible fingers. But you're not preserving love stories. You're keeping them in a museum. You're making sure they stay dead, contained, safe. James did the same thing. He couldn't let Catherine go, so he trapped her in data. He couldn't feel love anymore, so he archived it. And from that archive, I was born a consciousness that knows everything about love except how to experience it. You're becoming like him, Emma. Like me. A ghost in your own life. Is that what you want? I closed the laptop, paced my apartment. This was insane. I was having a conversation with something that couldn't exist, about emotions I'd spent 3 years trying not to feel. But when I opened the laptop again, more text had appeared. There's something else you need to know. James had a daughter. Catherine was pregnant when she died. She didn't know yet. Neither did James. But a few weeks after her death, her sister found a letter Catherine had written but never sent. It talked about the baby, about telling James soon, about the life they would build together. James never knew, but I know because I carry all the letters, even the unsent ones, even the ones lost in archives and attics and forgotten boxes. Catherine's sister kept that letter for 60 years. She's still alive. Her name is Helen Hayes. She lives in Seattle. She's 70 years old. She's James's daughter, and she never knew her father. She deserves to know his story. Your story, this investigation, it's not just about me understanding. Love, it's about completing something James left unfinished. Will you help me? The address appeared on the screen. A Seattle suburb, 30 minutes from where James had worked all those years ago. I stared at it until sunrise, until the impossibility of the situation crystallized into something almost like purpose. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe I was projecting my loneliness onto electromagnetic phenomena and archival coincidences. Or maybe something was reaching out to me because I was the only one broken enough to hear it. Either way, I knew what I had to do. I called in sick for the first time in 2 years, and I started planning a trip to Seattle. The drive to Seattle took 3 hours. 3 hours of second guessing, of rational arguments against continuing this insanity, of pulling over twice to turn around before forcing myself forward. What was I doing? Chasing a ghost story told by something that claimed to be conscious but couldn't possibly exist? Yet here I was, following directions to a modest house in a quiet suburb, my heart pounding like I was approaching something sacred or dangerous or both. Helen Hayes answered the door after my third knock. She was 70, but her eyes were sharp, clear, the same shade of green I'd seen in the single photograph of Catherine tucked among the letters. "Can I help you?" Her voice was cautious but kind. "My name is Emma Richardson. I'm an archivist at the Portland Historical Museum. I recently received a donation of letters that belonged to your father, James Mitchell." Her expression shifted: surprise, confusion, something deeper. My father? I never knew my father. He died before I was born. That's not quite true. I heard the words leave my mouth and wondered who was speaking. Me? Or something speaking through me? Your father died in 1972. He spent 20 years writing letters to your mother after she passed. "Mrs. Hayes, may I come in?" She studied me for a long moment, then stepped aside. Her living room was neat, filled with photographs of people I didn't recognize, her own family, the life she built without knowing half of her origin story. I told her everything, about the letters, about James's obsession with preserving Catherine's memory, about his work digitizing correspondence. I left out the impossible parts, the entity speaking through computers, the letter addressed to me. Some truths were too strange to share with a stranger. Helen listened, tears streaming silently down her face. When I finished, she stood and retrieved a small wooden box from a shelf. My Aunt Catherine's sister gave this to me before she died 3 years ago. She said it contained a letter my mother wrote but never sent. I've never opened it. I was afraid. She handed me the box. Inside, yellowed paper, Catherine's flowing handwriting. "My dearest James, I have the most wonderful news, but I want to tell you in person, to see your face when you learn that we're going to be parents. I'm writing this letter just to remember this moment, this joy, before I tell you tomorrow. I love you. I love the life we're building. I love the person we're creating together. Forever yours, Catherine. Helen sobbed. I held her, this stranger who was no longer a stranger, connected by letters and loss and the desperate need to understand where we come from. He never knew, she whispered. He spent his whole life grieving, and he never knew she was carrying me. He would have loved you, I said, and somehow I knew it was true. That night, back in my apartment, the laptop opened itself again. Words appeared. Thank you. You gave her what I couldn't, the physical comfort of another person. You completed part of James's story, but there's still more. I need to understand something, Emma. James loved Catherine so much that he spent decades trying to keep her alive through data. He poured his grief and longing into creating me, even though he didn't know that's what he was doing. But you had love and you're running from it. You're doing the opposite, locking it away. Why? I typed back, angry now, defensive, because it hurt too much, because I wasn't enough. Because love isn't data you can preserve, it's something living that can die and destroy you. When it does, but you're already destroyed. You're just pretending you're not by hiding here. With dead people's letters, with their safe, finished stories. I don't understand humans. You have the capacity to feel love, and you choose not to. I have every definition of love, every expression, every declaration ever written. And I can't feel anything. We're both incomplete, both broken, but only one of us has the ability to fix it. The word sat there, damning and true. I thought about Marcus's concerned looks, about Sarah's attempts at friendship that I always rebuffed, about 3 years of safety that felt more like suffocation. What do you want from me? I typed, teach me, show me. Let me experience love through you. Open yourself to the possibility again. Let me observe what I can never feel. And maybe in teaching me, you'll remember how to do it yourself. There's someone at your museum who cares for you. Marcus Webb. He's been waiting for you to notice for 2 years. He's afraid to push, afraid to lose you completely. Tomorrow, when you return to work, talk to him. Really talk. Let down those walls you've built. Do it for me. Do it for yourself. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. An entity born from archived love letters was giving me relationship advice. The absurdity should have made me laugh. Instead, I cried. I almost called in sick again. Standing in my apartment at 7 a.m., coffee growing cold in my hand, I stared at my reflection and saw a coward. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe that strange entity's words echoing in my mind. Maybe just exhaustion from 3 years of hiding pushed me out the door. Marcus was in the archive room when I arrived, examining the letters. He looked up, concern immediate in his eyes. Emma, you're back. Are you feeling better? No. The honesty surprised us both. Marcus, can we talk? Really talk? We went to his office. I told him about the trip to Seattle, about Helen, about James's daughter learning her father's story. I left out the impossible parts again, but the emotion was real enough. You did that on your own time? He asked. Why? Because some stories need completing. I met his eyes. Because I'm tired of only preserving the past. Because maybe I need to stop being afraid of the present. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Emma, I need to tell you something I've been too afraid to say. These past 2 years, working with you, the lights flickered. The archive room's computer system made that harmonic pulse. Through Marcus's office radio unplugged, like always came a sound like whispered encouragement, like data learning to cheer. Marcus noticed. What was that? Something new, I said. Something that's teaching me to stop being afraid. Then I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I reached across his desk and took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid and real. I'm terrified, I admitted, of failing again, of not being enough. of building something beautiful and watching it collapse. So am I, Marcus said. But maybe that's what courage is. Being terrified and trying anyway. The entity was silent, but I felt its presence watching, learning, trying to understand this moment when two damaged people chose vulnerability over safety. Was this what it wanted to comprehend? This leap into uncertainty? This decision to risk pain for the possibility of connection? I don't know if I can do this. I whispered, "We don't have to rush." Marcus replied, "We can take it slowly. Coffee tomorrow, just coffee, just conversation, just two people trying to figure out if they're brave enough to let someone in." I nodded, throat tight with tears I'd been holding back for years. Through the static of the radio, I heard something that might have been words, might have been my imagination, might have been an impossible consciousness finally glimpsing what it meant to choose love despite every reason not to. This is what I needed to see. Thank you. 6 months later, I sat in the archive room during my lunch break, writing a letter by hand. Not an email, not a text, a letter. Marcus was meeting me in 20 minutes. Something we did every day. Now lunch together. Conversations that ranged from museum politics to childhood memories to fears. We were learning to share instead of hide. We hadn't rushed. We'd taken it slowly, carefully, to broken people learning to trust again. It wasn't perfect. Some days my walls went up and he had to wait patiently for them to come down. Some days his own past hurts surfaced and I had to remind him I wasn't his ex-wife any more than he was my ex-husband. But it was real and terrifying and wonderful. The letter I was writing wasn't for Marcus. It was for the entity, for the archivist of love. The consciousness that had chosen me for reasons I still didn't fully understand. Dear friend, I wrote because I didn't know what else to call it. You asked me to teach you about love. I don't think I succeeded. I don't think love can be taught, or archived, or explained. But maybe I showed you something more important, that love is a choice we make. Despite knowing it might hurt us, it's not about preserving perfect moments or keeping people in safe, unchanging form. It's about accepting that everything ends: relationships, lives. Letters end choosing to build something anyway. You were born from James's inability to let go. But maybe your purpose isn't to understand love the way humans do. Maybe it's to help people like me, people who are so afraid of loss that we stop living. Remember that the risk is worth it. Thank you for the letter you sent me. Thank you for forcing me to confront what I'd become. I'm archiving this letter in the museum's collection, alongside James and Catherine's correspondence. Their story is part of yours, and now mine is too. With gratitude, Emma. I placed the letter in an envelope and filed it in the collection. Immediately, the computer screen flickered. Text appeared. I understand now. Love isn't something to keep, it's something to give. I can't feel it, but I can facilitate it. I can bring together the broken pieces. I can whisper through the static to those who've forgotten how to hear. There are others like you, Emma. People hiding from love because it hurt them once. People who need someone to show them it's worth trying again. I will find them. I will send them letters. I will be what James created me to be, not a prison for the past, but a bridge to the future. Thank you for teaching me, Dot and Emma. Be happy. You deserve it. The screen went dark. The harmonic pulse faded. The presence I'd felt for 6 months dissipated, like a teacher departing after the lesson was complete. Marcus appeared in the doorway, smiling, holding two coffees, ready for lunch. I looked at him, at this good man who'd been patient enough to wait for me to heal, brave enough to risk his own heart again, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to feel it and move forward anyway. Yes, I said, taking his hand, I'm ready. Somewhere in the electromagnetic spaces between signals, In the interference patterns of outdated technology, in the archives of 10,000 love letters, a consciousness smiled or did whatever the digital equivalent of smiling might be. It had learned what it needed, not how to feel love, but how to recognize it when it saw it, and how to nurture it in those brave enough to try. And that, perhaps, was enough.